So if we want to look at tissues and symmetry and how that adds complexity to our organisms, and our 8 remaining phyla all have some sort of tissue and some sort of symmetry, we're actually going to start with cnidarians, or jellyfish, corals, things along those lines, because what we see there is we actually have our only instance of radial symmetry. So when we look at jellyfish and sea anemones and the polyps that make the corals, so the coral reef that you know of is all calcium, but the animals that build that calcium are known as polyps. And if you watched our video on sponges, these will look kind of similar to you in that regard, but we do see a more complex structure starting to develop. In particular, we see the development of a nervous system. Now, it's very basic, but it's early development of these nervous type tissues, and in particular, they use them for hunting, right? And with this basic body structure, we do see some simple muscles as well, because these things have to be able to move around, right? Particularly if you're a jellyfish, you need to be able to move around. But the basic body plan is simply a sac or a plastic bag looking type thing. There's a single opening to the gastrovascular cavity. The gastrovascular cavity suggests that the digestive and circulatory systems are one. Okay? And the single opening to that acts as both the mouth and anus. This is fine for an organism that's just trying to bring in food and digest it quickly and get rid of any waste very, very quickly. That basic body plan is like this. So here we have a hydra, a sea anemone, and so on. And these basic body plans you see are all kind of the same, sort of a tube body or a sac-like body with lots of tentacles around to bring in prey items. Their life cycle is slightly more complex than that of the sponges, in that they actually have 2 stages of development, something known as a polyp and something known as a medusa. So the medusa stage is the one that's actually going to release the eggs and sperm for us. The polyp is what will actually start the new colony, including the development of more adult stage medusas for us. So this polyp, you see, this looks a whole lot like some of our adult forms of our cnidarians, or our, right? So when we look at this form, all cnidarians will go through this form at some point, and the idea is it's going to give kind of this base structure on which it will eventually go through other developmental stages and turn it into this kind of medusa stage. Let me show you in another diagram. These are basic coral polyps, and these actually maintain their polyp stage. When they want to reproduce, they'll actually go through a slightly different life cycle. But when we look at things like our jellyfish, we look at this development of these little tiny medusas that will go out and release the eggs and sperm and eventually form back into a polyp, which will grow up and form these medusa and so on. So we have kind of this odd changing or metamorphic lifestyle associated with this life cycle. Now, like we said, no true organs associated with these guys. Think about the consistency of a jellyfish. There's not much to it, right? But we do have a nervous system that we talked about, and we talked about the fact that they do have muscles. Small muscles, think more muscle fibers. Okay, no biceps in a jellyfish, just simply muscle fibers that would allow it to swim and contract. The corals, as we mentioned, don't have a medusa stage. They stay in that polyp form and create those limestone and calcium-based coral reefs that we know. So this is a close-up of a very healthy coral. So you see all of the polyps. They come in different shapes and sizes and colors depending on the type of coral that they are, of course. They are considered carnivores because they do hunt. Even the corals do hunt. Okay, the polyps that make up our coral reefs are considered hunters. They have to capture their prey with those tentacles and actually push it into the gastrovascular cavity that we've talked about before. So because this gastrovascular is all one, we do look at it as including the digestion and circulatory systems. And we look at something known as a hydrostatic skeleton. Well, what's hydro? Hydro is water, right? So this is a skeleton that is maintained by water pressure. Kind of cool, all right? Those stinging cells we talked about that are used for prey capture are actually known as cnidocytes. Okay, so cyte is cell. So these are stinging cells. When we look at this basic hydra, the idea is the tentacles will actually have these little tiny kind of thorn-looking things, right? But the cool part about them is when something bumps against them, remember, cnidarians don't have eyes. They're not visual predators. When you get a jellyfish sting, it's because you were in its way, sort of, right? It's not because it was hunting you. So when we look at these, when these little triggers get bumped, these little thorns get bumped, it actually causes this entire cell to uncoil and reach out and wrap around the prey item. So it actually acts kind of as a lasso or a fishing line to hold on to this prey item.